Today, we're going to be talking about literal equations, and by the end of the lesson, we should be able to solve equations with multiple variables for just one of those variables. So to start with, what is a literal equation? A literal equation is an equation that involves more than one variable. We can see that in our example below. This equation has x, y, and z, and currently it's solved for z, but I could solve it for x or y and get those two variables by themselves. Well, what are the steps to solve? First, I need to locate the variable in the equation. I have to know what I'm solving for. Second, I'm going to isolate that variable by using inverse operations. So if something is being added to my variable, I'm going to subtract. And something is being multiplied, I'm going to divide, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off kind of easy with one-step equations. So remember the steps. First, identify your variable and what you're looking for. So I am solving for c. Here is c in my equation. I like to box it because it helps me see what I need to get rid of. If I'm looking at my equation, and remember there's those two different sides, I need to get rid of what is on the same side as c. Now 273 is the only other thing on the same side as c, so I'm going to use my inverse operation to get rid of it. I notice that 273 is being added, so I am going to subtract. So minus 273 from the right side, minus 273 from the left side, and that cancels on the right. And as I go to simplify the left-hand side, I notice that I cannot actually subtract 273 from k, so I just write it horizontally. K minus 273 is equal to c, and that is my final answer. Okay, next example. So on this next one, I'm solving for h. I'm going to identify it. Okay, and I really need to know what operations are going on between h and these two that I'm trying to get rid of. Well, remember, if there's no plus sign, there's multiplication. Well, when I'm wanting to get rid of something that's being multiplied, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to write a division bar underneath my h and my m and my g. And since they're both being multiplied, I can divide them both. And since they're being multiplied simultaneously, I'm going to divide them simultaneously. So dividing by both sides by mg. If I clean that up, what happens? M multiplying by m and dividing by m cancels out. Multiplying by g and dividing by g cancels out. And on the right, I simplify down to h. And on the left, I cannot simplify this. So I simply just rewrite this. That is my answer, u divided by m and g. And that is the answer. All right, last example. Remember, I'm going to identify my variable that I want to solve for, w, and I'm going to find it. Now I notice that in my equation, my variable that I'm of interest is being divided by t. So I'm going to use my inverse operation. The inverse of division is multiplication. So I'm going to times by t, and I'm going to times by t. And I'm going to go ahead and simplify what's there. So multiplying by t and dividing by t cancels out. And I'm left with w, my variable of interest, on the right side. And on the left side, I'm left with tp. Now, I could also write it pt equals w, because remember, you can multiply two variables in any order. All right, and we're going to solve some two-step equations. We are going to solve for L. Very first step, identify where it is in the equation. Notice everything on the same side of the equation as it. I need to get rid of 2, and I need to get rid of 2w. If your variable that you're solving for has a coefficient, that's always going to be the last thing I solve for. So this 2 is going to be the last thing to go. I need to get rid of 2w. Now, I'm not going to get rid of them separately because they are their own term, and I get rid of terms together. I am going to do the opposite of however it is being combined to L. It is being combined to L with addition, so I'm going to subtract minus 2w. minus 2w. And that results in p minus 2w is equal to 2l. Now my next step is to get L by itself. Here I'm still going to locate my variable, and in order to get rid of the 2 that is with it, remember there is multiplication going on there. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. So dividing by 2. And here's the key, I need to divide everything on the left side by 2. So what does that result in? That results in L, which is what's left over on the right side, and I can reorder this to either side of my equal sign, p minus 2w divided by 2. Now my last step, if I can, I'm going to simplify. I notice that there's a 2w and a 2 in the denominator, and those can be simplified. So I'm going to simplify this one step further, and when you divide both of the terms. So p divided by 2, and that cannot be simplified, minus, because there's a minus here, 2w divided by 2. Well, the 2's will cancel out when I divide that, and I'm just left with w. So that would be my completely simplified answer. All right, next problem. Solve for b. Well, here is b. It is in front of my parentheses. Now, do not distribute on these problems if you can help it. My goal is to isolate b, and if I distribute b, I'm going to end up with 2 b's. I don't want 2 b's. I only want 1 to solve. So I need a different method of solving it other than distributing. Well, remember that b is being combined to c and d. Well, both c and d are in parentheses, which means b is being multiplied to them. So how could I undo that? Well, I can divide because it's in parentheses. So I'm going to divide by c plus d. I'm going to divide by that entire parentheses. Divide by c plus d. What's left over? On the right-hand side, b. On the left-hand side, a divided by c plus d. Now, one last step. If you have those parentheses and there's nothing in front of them, I can drop them. So I'm going to rewrite my answer, and I'm going to write b first on my equation equals a over c plus d. And that's it. That's my answer. All right, last problem in this section. I need to solve for t. All right. Now, a lot of people think that because I have a division symbol going on here between d and t, that I need to times by d. Well, what happens when I times d by d? I don't actually cancel them out. Actually, it turns into d squared. So I cannot multiply. Well, if I can't multiply, what am I going to do? Well, what I need to do when a variable that I am looking for is in the denominator, okay, if a variable you're looking for is in the denominator, you are going to get that variable out of the denominator. Okay, make sure it's not in the denominator. Well, how can I get rid of it in a fraction? Well, if I'm dividing by t and I don't want it in the fraction anymore, I'm going to cancel it out from the side, actually. I'm going to times by t. Now you might be like, that's going to cancel it out. But remember, we're going to times it to both sides. So it's not actually disappearing completely, it's just going to the opposite side of my equation. So I have t times r is equal to d. Well, remember, I'm still solving for t. Now it's just on the opposite side of my equal sign. But if I notice it is being multiplied, so to solve it, I'm going to isolate it by doing the inverse, which is division. So my final answer would be t is equal to, okay, I can't simplify this, so d divided by r. And that is my final answer. Right, multi-step equations. Let's go ahead and get started. When I'm solving for t, okay, remember, again, if I'm solving for t, I'm trying to isolate it. I'm trying to get rid of the 4, the r, and the 2/3. I don't want to make t have more things with it, so I am not going to distribute. I'm actually going to avoid distributing on these problems if I can. So if as I solve for t, remember to get rid of whatever is furthest away from t first. Well, everything inside the parentheses is closest to t. So what is outside that parentheses? 2/3. Now when you try to get rid of a fraction, remember I'm going to do the opposite operation, or you can multiply by its reciprocal and that will eliminate it. So I'm going to multiply by 3/2. Notice what happens when I multiply by 3/2. Multiplying by 3 and dividing by 3 cancels. Multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2 cancels. And I'm going to multiply that on both sides. So times by 3/2. So let's bring down everything that we have simplified. So 3/2p is equal to, now because there's nothing in front of the parentheses, I can drop them, r minus 4t. Now remember, I'm still trying to get t by itself, and I'm going to continue to get rid of whatever is furthest from it. 4 is with t, so I need to get rid of r. Well, how is r being combined? Now don't be fooled by this minus sign. This minus sign is really attached to that 4. Remember, these are two different terms. R has an imaginary little plus sign in front of it, so in order to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract minus r. Remember, if I have things that cannot simplify, I'm just going to rewrite it horizontally. So 3/2p minus r is equal to, now that minus sign stays with the 4t. Now my last step is to get t by itself, so I'm going to divide by -4, divide by -4. So t is equal to, now if I can simplify, I'm going to type it into my calculator. 3/2 p divided by 4. I can take the fraction 3/2 and I can divide it by 4. I'm going to use my calculator for that. That is going to give me -3/8p. And I'm going to divide this as well. Remember, there's a coefficient of 1. A -1 divided by -4 is a positive r/4, or 1/4 r. All right, last problem. I'm going to solve for f. Now, in order to solve for f, I'm going to have to get rid of t, e, and p. Now, remember, f is being trapped in these parentheses up top with the t and the e, and everything up there is being divided by p. So in order to isolate, I'm going to get rid of the p first, because it is the furthest away. Because it's being divided, I'm going to multiply. So times by p. All right, that leaves me with multiplying and dividing by p at the same time cancel. P times k, and I'm going to drop the multiplication sign, equals, now that top part of my fraction and the parentheses are going to drop away. I'm going to go ahead and solve for f still. That means I'm going to get rid of whatever is still furthest away from it, which is t. So because it is being added, I'm going to subtract it. So minus t. I still can't combine any of those variables. Minus t equals that zeroed out. And if I simplify the right side, I just have EF. Now I'm still solving for f. I'm going to divide by e because there's multiplication going on. Remember, I'm going to divide everything. So f is equal to p k minus t all over e. Notice I just took this big chunk and I wrote it down here. Now if I notice here, there's no e in the pk, and there's no e with the t, so I cannot simplify. So this is my final answer. One more. On this last one, I'm going to solve for c. So I'm solving for c. That means I need to get rid of ab, and I need to get rid of 3, because 3 is its coefficient. I'm going to keep it there until the end. ab is being added, so I'm going to subtract AB. Now, some of you may be tempted to divide because A and B are being multiplied, but remember, I'm getting rid of just that term, and that term is being added. So on this other side, I'm going to subtract AB. That's gone. And on the right-hand side, I'm left with 3C is equal to. Now, notice that even though these both have A's, the second thing's not the same, so I have to leave it separate. AD minus AB plus 8. And I can actually reorder this in any order I want as long as I'm subtracting AB. Last step is to divide by 3. Divide everything by 3. So I have C is equal to, now I'm going to write down AD minus AB plus 8 over 3. And the very last thing I need to do is double check that I can't simplify this. AD does not divide by 3, AB will not divide by 3, and 8 won't divide by 3. So I'm going to leave this as it is. And that's it. If you have any questions, reach out to your teacher, and have a good day.